when you look at the SEC, you mentioned this league, something Kirby Smart says a lot in any given press conference, pre or post game. Feels like right now, though, Cato, for Georgia, they're looking at A&M and Alabama in a crash course setting as meeting in Atlanta. Both teams in those standings are undefeated in the conference. Georgia's sitting there in the 3 spot, having that tiebreaker over Ole Miss, but not holding the tiebreaker over Alabama. I would be surprised if we didn't see A&M and Bama in Atlanta. I also think that, quite frankly, those have been the 2 best teams to this point when it comes to trustworthiness and quarterback play and different ways to win. So I'd be shocked if we didn't see A&M and Bama face off in Atlanta for the conference championship. But, hey, Texas also controls their own destiny. They're going to play Georgia this weekend. They're going to play A&M at the end of the year. A lot to unpack there with the SEC, but what are you watching there, Cato, across the board here in the SEC as we move into the month of November here and look down the home stretch?
Yeah, JD, I think specifically this weekend, I'm just looking at the disruptors, man, and that's Oklahoma and that's Texas. These are teams that are right on the brink of being in the playoff, being out of the playoff, and they have really good opportunities right ahead of them this weekend to shake things up. I mean, they'll be doing it in the name of them keeping themselves in the college football playoff race, but Alabama loses to Oklahoma. Next thing you know, they have another loss on their overall record and their first SEC loss. Then you have to think about that head-to-head against Georgia. It keeps them ahead, but then Georgia themselves playing a very hungry Texas team trying to keep their hopes alive. So I think after this weekend, it'll get a lot more clear, but I think it'd be super interesting if Texas or Oklahoma can put a win in the win column for the SEC for themselves and kind of like by default push Ole Miss maybe up a little bit even in the rankings, just because Ole Miss has their own head-to-head over Georgia, which is super clutch for them if there's any more disruption here. And I think them and A&M kind of have the easiest cakewalks going forward the rest of the year. You look at A&M playing South Carolina this weekend, an FCS opponent, and then Texas, which we'll see where that one's at. But then Ole Miss, again, just chilling. Like Ole Miss this weekend playing – I think they have a – no, they don't have a bye. They play Florida.
Yeah.
Florida and then
Kiffin
Mississippi
Bowl.
State. Yeah. So
We'll
it could get weird the last week of the season. It's looking like A&M and Alabama. If they take care of business, they'll do their thing. But Texas and Oklahoma, weirdly, I think they're in an interesting spot in the conference to maybe shake some stuff up at the top.
Ole Miss is so intriguing because they're one of those teams that right now, just what you mentioned, they don't have the tiebreaker over Georgia. They're sort of blocked in that regard, so you're kind of open for some chaos. But Ole Miss, Cato, even though they only have one conference loss right now, if you were to put them in Atlanta somehow, some way, I keep saying this, get me in a 4-quarter spot with Lane Kiffin holding the play calling sheet, with Trinidad Chambliss behind center, and let's see what freaking happens. Like, I think they are one of the most liable teams should they find their way to Atlanta. I would be very curious to see how they match up because I think Lane Kiffin could create some magic. And Ole Miss, on all years, man, when it was Jackson Dart last year and Walter Nolan last year, and they went all in the portal, the year after that with a D2 quarterback. We didn't even start the year. Ole Miss, if they find their way to Atlanta, that'd be one to monitor, I think. That'd be one to monitor when it comes to the Rebs out there.
Yeah, I accidentally said Ole Miss beat Georgia. That's their one.
No, I caught your drift.
I was thinking of the LSU game, the Oklahoma game, those big wins they got. But I think the interesting thing and the question I have for you, JD, if you're a coach and you're in that fringe spot, if you're a Georgia, if you are a Ole Miss, do you want to play in the SEC championship? As far as the outlook for the playoff, knowing your spot is there. We'd like to think that the Big Ten and the SEC runner-up, it's looking like those are the teams that will probably get those buys. I think your reward for playing in those games at the 2 conferences we regard the highest, I think you will get a buy. But we saw last year, the teams that got a bye didn't play well. Psychologically, if you were a head coach for one of these Big Ten or SEC teams, would you want to play in conference title weekend, or would you want to stay home and maybe roll the dice and start the playoffs sooner? Playoff bye, conference title bye, it's kind of like a little trade-off there, I think.
Dude, it's such a great question, and it's not as cut and dry as I think most people believe it to be. I think if you're a head coach, there's the default of, well, you're a competitor. Competitors want to win the prize. The prize is winning the SEC or being a runner-up in the SEC and still getting a bye. That is the perceived prize. But, I mean, what you just said, if you get to stay in rhythm and host a playoff game, which I guarantee you the ADs are like, no, we'll host a playoff game. We'll get that cash money and we'll go forward from there.
Right.
I wonder if you don't play in this conference title game, and what we just said, you don't win the prize of a bye if you're the runner-up or the conference champ, which everyone would sign up to be the conference champ tomorrow, I think. I think you're almost more dangerous in some ways of what you just said, keeping the rhythm, keeping your routine. We saw last year that was kind of the name of the game here. And I don't know if I want a full, 3 weeks plus to think about it. Like, I think I want to, if we're hot right now, especially if you're Ole Miss, I want to stay hot and be hot and keep going. Like, A&M to me is one of those teams, it sounds funny, I would actually worry about them if they got a bye in the college football playoff because of all the new pieces, because of last year, all those things. I don't know, Kato. It's an interesting spot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different team to team, and these coaches obviously know their teams best, but not to look too hard into it, but A&M postseason last year, just folded against USC in that bowl game, and they had to sit around for a while before playing in that game. I think Ole Miss would actually benefit the most if they stumbled into the SEC title game, just because you're playing Citadel. We'll see what the Florida game looks like. You play the Egg Bowl game. It might help them to get one more rep under the heavy bar before going into the postseason versus a team like Alabama, who since the Florida State game just has jumped off the porch and they're in win mode, and they know that their season's kind of been on the line since that first week, and we saw it bring the best out of them after that Florida State game. So definitely team to team, but always going to be an interesting narrative to follow, just given how last year went with the first round bye team. So love to see it. I have a friend who joked as soon as they expanded the playoff, he's like, "Oh, Saban's going to be resting guys in the SEC championship." So I don't know if we'll ever get that far, but just interesting to watch as far as who's in, who's out of the conference title weekend, and then how they play in the playoff.
Not to rabbit hole this thing, but I think when we go to 16, conference title weekend becomes play-in weekend. You got multiple teams trying to find a way to play into the conference or to the college football playoff. Rather, the conference title will have been decided during the regular season. I digress, but I will say this: I think if you're Texas, they're so interesting to me because the way they finished with Georgia this weekend, Texas A&M the final weekend of the season, and then if you do find a way in the conference title game, you're like, okay, that's a lot of wear and tear on your roster. But I'm also there's a lot of youth on that roster. There's a lot of new pieces. Let's stay in rhythm here in some respects. It's this interesting dichotomy of I want to keep this team running hot if we find a way to win the SEC, but at the same time, to play that level of competition that many weeks in a row, you'd almost think you would need a rest. Like Georgia needed a rest at the end of the regular season. And after they won the conference title last year, Kirby's like, no, we needed a rest, man. We needed to get our guys back healthy. So I don't know. It's curious.
Yeah, definitely different when you lose your starting quarterback, too. You're trying to get another guy in there like he was last year with Gunnar Stockton. I think Texas wouldn't mind getting Arch as many reps as possible if they're going into the postseason the way he's kind of turned things around the last 2 games he's played. So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see who benefits from the rest, who maybe gets a little rusty. Rest over rust, man. It's going to be a debate as old as time, I think, in this playoff era. But what conference do you want to jump to next here?
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts here before we moved on. I still think it's A&M Bama.
Yeah,
Atlanta.
Me too.
You think so?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma, though, man, I think they're going to give Alabama their best shot this weekend, and I think that could shake some stuff up. But, yeah, just in this scenario, you lean A&M Alabama, and that'd be an exciting matchup.
It'd be awesome. Those 2 teams in Atlanta.